Over 2 days, President Trump and I covered a lot of ground.
Look who's in the back of the car. Look who's in the back of the car. Him right here.
Starting in Iowa on Tuesday, where we rode together in his brand new armored limo, the Beast.
This is some piece of machinery.
Oh, this is amazing, actually.
After Trump raised the Mueller report himself.
You have to go, what's your pitch to the swing voter on the fence?
Safety, security, great economy. I think I've done more than any other first-term president ever. I have a phony witch hunt, which is just a phony pile of stuff. Mueller comes out, there's no collusion, and essentially a ruling that no obstruction, and they keep going with it. You know what? People are angry about it.
I don't think that's what he found, but we don't have time for that. Now we'll talk about that
later. That is what he found. Excuse me. He found no collusion, and he didn't find anything having to do with obstruction because they made a ruling based on his findings, and they said no obstruction.
He didn't examine collusion. He laid out evidence of obstruction.
Oh, are you trying to say now that there was collusion, even though he said there is no collusion?
He didn't say there's no collusion.
He said no collusion.
He said he didn't look at collusion.
George, the report said no collusion.
Did you read the report?
Yes, I did, and you should read it too.
I read
Come on, let's go. Let's go. Well, you should read it too, George. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Well, you should read it too, George. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Well, you should read it too, George. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Well, you should read it too, George.
Back at the White House Wednesday, we were invited to the Oval Office, where the president returned to the Mueller report again unprompted, this time responding to a question about 2020 polling he doesn't like.
But why does it bother you so much?
Because it's untrue. I like the truth. You know, I'm actually a very honest guy. If I thought they were correct, I wouldn't be complaining at all. I understand that. It's like the witch hunt that goes on. No collusion with Russia. There was no collusion. And what bothers me,
as that's not what Robert Mueller found.
It said no collusion.
In fact, the report cites insufficient evidence to charge a criminal conspiracy.
No, George, all I want is the truth. All I want is fairness.
But you say that, for example, you were pursuing a Trump Tower in Moscow during the campaign and denying any relationship with Russia.
George, let me tell you, I didn't even do a deal in Moscow. You know, I don't even think they had land. Excuse me. Pursuing. What does pursuing mean? You mean because somebody walks in and says, hey, we're looking at it. Do you know that I don't even think they had a site? I don't even think they knew who was going to do the deal. It was a concept of a deal, more of a concept than anything else. It was a concept of a deal someplace in Russia, probably in Moscow. And I was looking at places all over the world.
Didn't voters have a right to know that?
I wouldn't mind telling them. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I didn't consider that pursuing a deal when you don't even have a site.
Then that stunning admission about the prospect of accepting help from a foreign power in 2020.
This time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
Later that day, I asked him about Mueller's findings on obstruction of justice.
The Attorney General said you didn't commit obstruction of justice. Robert Mueller said he's not reaching a decision, could not exonerate you. And he laid out all that evidence. More than 1,000 formal federal prosecutors.
But they're all politicians. Hey, George, look, I know more about prosecutors than you'll ever know. They're politicians. I could get you 5,000 that would also say that there's nothing. I saw the names, and these are all, many of them are Trump haters. Many of them, if you look at the names.
Many Republicans
I could get you thousands. You know how many prosecutors there have been if you add them all up? We could get you thousands of prosecutors. I've been treated so unfairly because I never did anything. There was no crime.
One of those prosecutors today, Kamala Harris, running for president, said
she's running for president. She's doing horribly. She's way down in the polls.
She says she would have no choice but to prosecute you.
Pocahontas is really cleaning her clock. And I heard she made that statement. And you know what? Who wouldn't? Probably if I were running in her position, I'd make the same statement.
I asked Trump about some of the specific evidence of possible obstruction Mueller cited in his report.
A lot of evidence, including the episode where you ask your White House counsel, Don McGahn, you tell him Mueller has to go. You call him twice and say, Mueller has to go. Call me when it's done.
Okay, now the story on that very simply. Number one, I was never going to fire Mueller. I never suggested firing Mueller.
That's not what he says.
Excuse, I don't care what he says. It doesn't matter. That was to show everyone what a good counsel he was. Now, he may have gotten it confused with the fact that I've always said, and I said it to you and I said it to anybody that would listen, Robert Mueller was conflicted.
But why would Don
But
McGahn
we had a business.
Why would he lie under oath? Why would he lie under oath?
Because he wanted to make
Mueller?
himself look like a good lawyer, or he believed it because I would constantly tell anybody that would listen, including you, including the media, that Robert Mueller was conflicted. Robert Mueller had a total conflict of interest. I didn't say that. Look, Article 2, I would be allowed to fire Robert Mueller. There was not, assuming I did all of the things I said I want to fire him. Number one, I didn't. He wasn't fired. Okay, number one, very importantly. But more importantly, Article 2 allows me to do whatever I want. Article 2 would have allowed me to fire him.
So it sounds like
I wasn't going to fire. You know why? Because I watched Richard Nixon go around firing everybody, and that didn't work out too well. So, very simply, Article 2 would allow me to do it.
Article 2 of the Constitution outlines the powers of the presidency. And the president's defenders argue he cannot commit obstruction of justice while exercising those powers.
You talk about Article 2. So your position is that you can hire or fire anybody, stop or start
That
any
is the
investigation?
position of a lot of great lawyers. That's the position of some of the most talented lawyers. And you have to have a position like that because you're the president. But without even bringing up Article 2, which absolutely gives you every right.
So a president can't obstruct justice?
A president can run the country. And that's what happened, George. I run the country and I run it well.
When the president does it, it's not illegal?
I'm just saying a president under Article 2, it's very strong. Read it. Do you have Article 2? Read it.
The president never sat for an interview under oath with the special counsel's team. Instead, he answered written questions about contacts with Russia. But he refused to take any questions about obstruction of justice.
But if you answer these questions to me now, why not answer them to Robert Mueller under oath?
Because they were looking to get us for lies, for slight misstatements. I looked at what happened to people, and it was very unfair. Very, very unfair. Very unfair.
So I'm listening to you. You're not worried about being prosecuted once you leave office?
I did nothing wrong, George. Did nothing wrong. There was no collusion. You don't even hear Russia mentioned anymore. Russia's not mentioned. Now it's all about obstruction of what? They built up a phony crime. They hired a man that hated Trump. He hired 18 people that were Democrats that hated Trump. Some of them contributed to Clinton's campaign. A couple of them worked for Clinton. I mean, what kind of a rigged deal is this? And then on top of it, after 2 years, and after being the most transparent in history, I gave them 1.5 million pages of documents, right? I gave them 400 or 500 witnesses. I let Don McGahn testify. I let him he was the White House counsel. I let him testify. I knew he was going to
for an
testify.
interview. You didn't answer questions on obstruction.
No, wait a minute. I did answer questions. I answered them in writing.
Not on
I don't know about
obstruction.
this. I don't know. I answered a lot of questions. They gave me questions. I answered them in writing.
Not an obstruction.
Look, George, you're being a little wise guy, okay? Which is, typical for you. Just so you understand. Very simple. It's very simple. There was no crime. There was no collusion. The big thing's collusion. Now there's no collusion. That means it was a setup. In my opinion, and I think it's going to come out. I hope it's going to come out. We're going to find out very soon because I really believe it's going to come out. When you look at Strzok, these FBI guys that were lowlifes, when you look, because the FBI is the greatest, but the top people were absolute lowlifes. When you look at Strzok and Page, and they're talking about an insurance policy, just in case she loses, that was the insurance
I've heard
policy.
you talk about
I
that
went
before.
through, George. I went through the insurance policy.
I understand that, but if they were determined to prevent you from becoming president, why wouldn't they leak it beforehand?
You know what? You'd have to ask them. Oh, they tried. They tried. And you know what? Had that gone out before the election, I don't think I would have had enough time to defend
You
myself.
clearly believe there was a group of people working against you. Do you think President Obama was behind it?
I would say that he certainly must have known about it because it went very high up in the chain, but you're going to find that out. I'm not going to make that statement quite yet, but I would say that President Obama had to know about it.
And of course, our conversation took place against the backdrop of growing calls from Democrats for an
Do you think
impeachment
that's the final
inquiry.
word? You're not worried about what happens in Congress?
Look, the Republicans in the Senate, every single one of them that I see know this is a witch hunt. They get it 100%, and that's what matters. The Democrats are going to do it only because they might think it helps them. I think it actually hurts them in the election. But there's never been a time in the history of our country where somebody was so mistreated as I have been. And this should never, ever be allowed to happen to another president again. A previous administration used the intelligence data and the intelligence agencies to spy on my campaign.
Do you believe that President Obama spied on
I
your campaign?
don't know, but hopefully we're going to find out.